Hello, and welcome to this video in the Shift Project Inclusion series, focusing on issues of diversity, inclusion, equity, and belonging for cultural networks and organizations. I am your host for today. My name is Sophie Dowden. I am project manager at the European Choral Association, Europa Cantat. In this, our first episode of the series, I'm delighted to be joined by Maria Vlachou, Executive Director of Acesso Cultura in Portugal. Acesso Cultura have been driving forward the discussion on diversity and inclusion issues, notably in a series of online workshops that has been so timely and so needed that they have had to add in extra sessions. In our conversation today, we discuss how we should understand diversity and inclusion and why it matters in the context of the cultural sector. We talk about recruitment, boards and membership, and finally, what it means to make an event inclusive. I hope you find something to inspire you to action from our conversation today. So, Maria, thank you very much for joining us for this first of our discussions about inclusion issues for the Shift project.
Thank you for the invitation, Sophie. Thanks.
So just to kick off, could you tell us a bit about yourself and what it was that brought you to focus on inclusion in your work?
Studying wise, I studied archaeology in Greece. I'm Greek. Then I did a master's in museum studies in London, and then I moved to Portugal. And here in Portugal, I worked first for a science center, a big science center here in Lisbon. Later on, for the municipal theatre, always in the area of communication, and always with a specific interest in understanding how what we do can be shared with more people, how something that we really love and we are dedicated to can be shared with more people, and in what ways. I think it's something that I learned with my mom. Probably it starts, a kind of interest in understanding other kinds of realities which are not our own, etc. Later on, through colleagues who had the same kind of concerns, and we got to learn things together and to do some work together. Eventually, by I think having the privilege of working in this sector, the culture sector, that despite not seeing the diversity in our mainstream organizations, it is quite a diverse sector if we look carefully and if we wish to engage. So I think that's it, more or less.
That's wonderful. And maybe then we can just start with some definitions for the audience, because this is an issue where things are not necessarily completely understood in the same way in different places. So could you define for us what is inclusion and what is diversity, and what's the difference?
Recently, because we're doing a course in Access Culture regarding diversity and inclusion, I went through different readings. I read some really beautiful definitions. The first thing I would like to say is that working around definitions, finding the right words, and of course our language develops following our mentality, the way our mentality develops. So working around definitions and finding the best words to express something should not stop us from doing things. Yeah, because we can stay here talking forever, trying to look for the right word. So that said, from everything I've read and the way I feel these things, I would say that diversity is all the ways people are different. And these differences can be visible differences, like someone's age or ethnic origin or disability. But there are also, when we discuss diversity, there are also invisible characteristics, like someone's sociocultural status, someone's marital status, or someone's sexual orientation. Now, when we think about inclusion, I would say it is a conscious effort on everyone's side to create welcoming spaces where people can be effective members of a team, of a group of people. And that means creating places where people can feel they belong, people can feel that they can feel psychologically safe, if you wish, and that their opinions are not mere suggestions, that they're actually valued and they are part of the decision-making process. So this is how I would define these two concepts. Yeah.
This is already, really a helpful place to start from. And I just want to kind of get into the details there a bit more as well, because I mean, you can imagine a situation where people have made an effort to create an inclusive environment, but maybe there's still not a lot of diversity in it. So how important is diversity if you're wanting to make your organization more inclusive? A bit more about the interrelation between the two things.
Well, for me, diversity is a fact of life. It's not something that depends on any of us. It exists independent of us. So what actually depends on us is the capacity to acknowledge that the world is diverse, and also the capacity to acknowledge that not all people have the same opportunities to be part and to be recognized in their totality, their total selves, and not leaving something outside the door in order to be able to fit in, to come in. So I would suggest that the question could be rather slightly different. So I would say that we should ask ourselves why we should do this, why we should invest in inclusion, why should we make this effort? Because it is a conscious effort if we wish to be inclusive. And we have to do this because it's everyone's right to participate. We cannot continue using people, which is something we often do, in order to justify our decisions. People have a place around the table because it's their right, not because we need them and then we can discard them, but because it is their right to be there. It is their right to dream of a career in the cultural sector. It is their right to have the ambition to be the best they can. So this is the first thing that comes to mind, and this is called the moral case for inclusion, a question of justice, let's say. But there are other reasons as well. I think there is also a creative, since we are working in the culture sector, there's a creative case for inclusion, and actually arts organizations and cultural organizations can benefit, can enrich their work by being open to a wider range of influences, of practices, of world visions. And if cultural organizations do that, develop that kind of work, I think they also have better chances of engaging with more people and more diverse people. So there is also a creative reason, a creative case for inclusion. And also I would add that there is another reason, which is the economic, if you wish, case for inclusion. If we read about businesses, there are studies that show that the more diverse the teams, the more successful decisions are made, and this brings more profit. And what would be the profit for our field? It's not exactly money, could be also, but it's not that. It's the joy, the happiness of engaging with more diverse people. That's what the profit would be, I think, for us.
I think this is, very beautifully and clearly put. So thank you for this. I think if anyone was wondering why they should bother spending time thinking about this, I think those are three very strong reasons to do it.
Yeah, there are lots of people, who have put lots of time in researching in the sense of, looking deeper into things, and these reasons are all are valid reasons in my view. Yes.
And I think that in the sector, what we found, for instance, when we were doing a survey among the partners in the Shift project, is that cultural leaders are often quite comfortable advocating for inclusion. They believe strongly in being inclusive, but there aren't necessarily the firm processes in the governance of the organization that that are looking actually at how things are being done in practice. So, I mean, I wanted to take the example here of recruitment policies. And do you see, I mean, it's a very, very general question, but do you see any issues in the way that cultural organizations are recruiting and in the result of the kind of people who end up in cultural organizations?
I think that we've already reached a point of awareness regarding diversity and how little inclusive we are. But although we advocate for them, we don't really understand what they mean in practice. Like with many other things in life, there's a big distance between theory and practice. So I don't think we are really aware or even ready to discuss inclusion in practice, equity in practice. What we've seen, we already had 3 different editions of our course, Diversity and Inclusion. And actually the whole title of our course is Diversity and Inclusion, Questions to Ask Ourselves. So what we realized in our discussion with the colleagues who participated in the course is that we show our awareness of certain issues. For instance, when we announce a new job, and we all use a paragraph that say, we welcome applications from such and such, so independent of, we do say that. And then some of us feel happy about it because we did what we had to do. And if we don't get applications from certain people, it's their fault, it's their problem. They're not qualified for this. They're not good enough for this, because the issue of meritocracy also does come up especially when we discuss positive discrimination, if you wish. And then there's always somebody who will say, we don't need to go that way. If people have the qualifications, they will get there. And we know it doesn't happen. So we've seen very recently in Portugal, the first signs of some cultural organizations working more around this, trying to make it into practice. And one thing we definitely realize is that if we'll continue using the same communication channels we've always used, we will reach the same people we normally reach.
Yeah.
Other people that we say we wish to have them around the table, either they don't have a relationship with us, they are not open to they don't get our newsletters, they don't follow us on social media. So we need to get in touch with the people or the organizations that can help us diversify our channels of communication, get to other people. That's one thing. I mean, diversify the channels.
Yeah.
The other thing is, imagine we diversify the channels and, for instance, we get someone with a disability applying for a job, but then they cannot get into the building to have the interview. Or once we realize that this person has a disability, we immediately think they will not have the capacity to be as good professionals as anybody else. And okay, we might even do the interview, but our preconceptions will not make us take the option of saying, this will be the person for this job. So we have lots of work to do still in those fields, preparing a truly inclusive working space where people, as I said before, they will feel welcome, they will feel they belong, they will feel safe, they will feel valued. So first we have to make that preparation and also diversify our communication channels. And I don't think that we're doing this. We're seeing the first steps being taken, but I don't think that we can say that's not yet, a generalized practice.
Yeah, this is, again, really interesting. There is a lot of groundwork to be done before you can really, and of course, people are going to have to try things out and experiment and try different communications channels and see what the results are. So in many ways, it is about, just looking at what the situation is and then trying to adjust
Yeah.
in any way.
I was thinking also, imagine there is a job announcement and our website is not accessible, web accessible.
Yeah.
How can a person with a visual impairment get access to the information, and how can they present their application? If it is a deaf person, do we open the possibility of them sending their application on a video with sign language? I mean, we really need to understand in detail what diversity and inclusion mean in practice and work around those issues.
What do you think actually about, I mean, obviously there may be some specific parts of a job role where specific experience or specific qualifications or whatever are needed. But what do you think about opening up job applications into a more kind of skills-based sort of job advert, so that it's not saying that, oh, you definitely need to have a master's degree and you need to have 5 years experience of doing this, and this kind of list of requirements that can be quite exclusive. But
the thing is, when we do this, and we discussed this in our latest course with some colleagues who tried different things. For instance, they didn't ask for a CV. We have an association in Lisbon called Alcantara. They didn't ask for a CV. They asked some questions and asked people to answer these questions. So they would evaluate through there, and then they would go into the interview. Another organization, the Gulbenkian Foundation, they were looking for young people to be consultants in a specific project. And for instance, they realized that if they would use the foundation's usual communication channels, they would get to the same people that usually participate. So they did that. They looked for other partners that could help them spread the word. And for instance, they gave the alternative of, you don't want to write a motivation letter, choose 3 images that would help us, realize why you wish to be involved in this project. More recently, I mean, it's very fresh, and I'm curious to see how this will be received. The National Theatre in Lisbon, the National Theatre Dona Maria, announced a job where they said that they welcome applications from diverse people who feel they might be underrepresented in the cultural sector and specifically in the performing arts. And they also said that should an applicant have a disability, they could guarantee the interview. They would not just, just leave people make the initial choice among different applications, acknowledging that many times disabled people, all too often, just many times, it's what happens more often, they don't even get to the interview. We were inspired by British colleagues who actually, on their application forms, apparently there is a box to tick if someone is disabled, to make sure they get called, they're given the chance, if they fulfill all the requirements, academic, experience, whatever, they can be interviewed, should be interviewed. Although it doesn't always happen like this, but there is this box. And yeah, we need to experiment, we need to risk. Not everybody is okay with positive discrimination. We need to try different things. If we continue doing things the way we always did them, inclusion is just a myth.
Yeah. I think already we're getting some inspiration here that we can now go and try out different organizations. So that's fantastic. And so moving on from the recruitment into maybe the team, and now to look at the board of a cultural organization instead. I mean, we're in this project, we're mostly European or international cultural networks, and that means that our boards are made up of people from different countries. And what would you say, is that automatically enough to be considered diverse in an international context?
If our only worry was where I come from, yes, immediately that's a step to make a board more diverse. but people are diverse in a number of ways. I was recently involved in a project called European project called Reshape, and there was particular concern regarding the participation of women, because certain things, I mean, for married women, women with children, are not obvious. We've been fighting for a long time for equal rights, but there's a difference between being equality and equity. It's not the same thing. I mean, if we consider equality, we all start from the same point. Yeah. But we don't all have exactly the same capacities. We can have the same skills, but not the same conditions in order to all start from the same point. For somebody perhaps to reach a goal, somebody needs to start from there and not from here, not everybody from here. So if women will still have to worry about what will happen to their family and kids if they need to be away, and we see this especially now, I don't know in Germany, but in Portugal we see it a lot with the pandemic and people working from home, that many women, while the children are home, they spend the day taking care of their children for their partners or husbands to do their work, and then women work later in the evening. So the day is not shared between couples. And we see this happening. It's a fact, it's reality. So going back to your question, because I feel I'm getting a bit, the origin, the nationality is just one thing, one thing that makes us diverse. But the world is much more diverse than this. As I mentioned in the beginning, it could be visible characteristics like ethnic origin or a disability or age. Age can be a huge barrier for many people, independent of their capacities and skills and experience to get somewhere. But also there are invisible issues like characteristics like marital status.
Yeah, I wish we had hours to talk, because I have so many tangents I could take you up on in this. But I will stick to what we planned, and so just to get back specifically to the topic of boards, why is it important that a board of a cultural organization is diverse?
I think it is important because if we look around to countries that have implemented inclusion policies for some time now, and we can evaluate how things are going, and I'm thinking specifically of the UK and the US, it doesn't seem to be working. And it doesn't seem to be working, I believe, because it is the same kind of people taking the decisions. As I said before, we can be more profitable the more diverse our teams are, including the more diverse our boards are. So there are different life experience, there are different worldviews that need to come in, there are different capacities that need to be considered. So if the body that decides on an organization's plan for the future is composed by people who look the same in the sense that they are quite homogeneous in terms of thinking, social background, intellectual background, etc. It means that we will not be aware of other realities. So our organizations will not be able to express that. And by this, again, I'm sorry to insist on that, but it doesn't mean I have a disabled person as a consultant. And then, okay, you told me what I need to know, and now I'll move on my own. That's not the idea. That's using people. That's turning people into tokens. It's to be an effective part of the board, of the team, and that they're, as I said, that their opinions are not just opinions or suggestions that we can discuss. Okay, we listen to you, we tick the box, you're part of the team, but we're not willing to make the effort to think things differently and to do things differently.
Yeah, I think in that case, it's also taking someone's entire experience and bringing it down to one single dimension or issue, as if there weren't things for them to contribute in all areas. So yeah, absolutely. And why do you think that that there's such trouble then with, as with other leadership positions, in making boards diverse, in welcoming a variety of different life experiences to our boards?
I would say there are different factors. Some were already mentioned. For instance, the fact that we always look into our bubble for people that could be part of these bodies and teams. So we don't go a bit further. We don't take that extra step to go to look to find out who else is here. Also, there is a lot of preconception. Even if we get to those people, we don't really believe they are capable teams of our teams. And then also, I think we shouldn't neglect the fact that there are also people who, because of who they are, they didn't have the opportunity to get the skills, to get the kind of education that they wish to have, or that they had the right to have. So we reach a point, I don't know if you remember, a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, the Brooklyn Museum hired a new curator for their African art collection. It was a white curator.
Yeah.
And of course, that shocked many of us, saying, okay, you could have given another opportunity as well. You could have looked a bit further. And then I was rather surprised at the time, but now I think I understand better, when famous curators like Okui and Wezer said, but there are no Black curators. That in our courses in the universities, we don't have Black people doing this kind of course. And that should be of concern to all of us, not just the culture sector, also the education sector, the social sector, because there is a reason why some people have to fight hard to be able to go through university, etc., and many more, are left behind. And we need to understand what kind of barriers we create, so that when we wish to recruit, it could be the fact that we don't get applications, but we need to really understand why we don't get the applications.
Yeah, got to go further back in the process and see, what's actually happening. Do you have any recommendations on what could be done to attract greater diversity of applicants, or to leadership positions or into the board? I feel like there is more that we could do in the kind of run up to.
I think, and that's a lesson I think we're learning from the lady, I'm afraid I don't remember her name, but the lady who is the inclusion strategist for Netflix. And she said exactly that. Look for the right people, take that extra step, try to find out who knows who you don't know. Yeah, try to see who can help you get to know, to discover new talent, to discover other people that are not usually part of the context where you work. And I think that would be the first step. And then work around our preconceptions of what people are able or not able to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And as membership organizations as well, I mean, we have the situation that our board comes from our membership, and also, of course, our board members are voted in by our membership. And so one of the questions that has come up, that I've heard in a few places, is what does it mean for us as a network even if we find candidates from different backgrounds, if our membership still only vote for the homogenous group of people? What does that mean for us, and what work can we do in advance, or at all, to do?
I think from our experience also, because Access Culture is a membership organization, we need to take the necessary steps for people to feel that they can trust us, first of all, that we are honest about what we say we wish to do, so that they can feel they wish to be part and they wish to contribute. They don't want to be used. We're all intelligent people. We know when we are being used. And of course, nobody wishes to play that role.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a relationship we're building, either internally or externally. We need to be honest, we need to be clear, we need to be ready to be corrected if you wish. Yeah, we need to be ready to listen, because I don't see how else we can actually create that inclusive space where people will actually feel welcome and valued.
Yeah, I feel like it's a conversation that needs to be had in the membership as well. Like I would like to sort of get away from us presenting how we are going to do this, but really like, yeah, create the conversation and build these kind of inclusive relationships within the membership already.
Yeah. If we consider again our specific case as an association, we will be 8 years old in May. And
congratulations.
This is, thank you. It seems, a long time already. And this year it was the first time a disabled member of our association proposed a project to us. So it's not us proposing and saying, please get involved. We wish you to get involved. It's somebody who feels that the environment is safe and welcoming, that they actually belong and they can make their own proposals. And in that process, I can say we are learning a lot. Just the fact that it is a person with other capacities, other ways of going around the projects, of thinking the projects, it's a great opportunity for us to learn and to be different. And I know, for instance, that as the executive director of the association, in certain negotiations, let's say, for building the project, I didn't take into account that person's specific needs and conditions of working, etc. And that made me feel rather ashamed that I didn't. But I'm also happy that this person felt that the ground was prepared for him to react to this, to react to that lack of understanding of mine and say, let me tell you something. So it made me feel that probably we're building something together that will actually be inclusive.
Yeah,
we wouldn't do this alone. We wouldn't do this if we were all the same people with all the same kind of capacities and thinking, that we would create a project like this.
This is a really beautiful example that you give there as well, about this need for people being able to be open with each other and being able to be vulnerable, and yeah, being able to learn rather than just sort of try to hide and avoid failing.
Yes.
And so I think that's a really, really kind of reassuring and a helpful story. And still on the topic of membership, so that's we've been talking about inclusion in membership there. What about diversity of membership? I mean, what steps can a network take if their membership is not diverse? What can they interpret from that? What should they be learning from that? Is it something they should act upon in a particular way, or?
To tell you the truth, I'm not sure if this is something that can happen from the beginning, before we build this this relationship of trust. So if we wish, I'm sure that as some people start trusting us, they get involved, they become members, etc. They speak for the association. It's not always the same person speaking for the association, etc. in public events. This will take things further. This will take us to other people. This will make other people say, okay, I'm interested in this. I want to be part of this, and I'll be safe if I join. So it takes time. I think it can happen, it will happen, but when our voice will be as diverse as the society out there is, that hides many people that could be our members, but they don't dare, or they are not interested the way, you know, we present ourselves to get involved with us.
Yeah, it's not something you should be forcing. In fact, it is about creating the right conditions, that creating like that safe environment, the psychological safety you mentioned earlier, developing relationships of trust, and also you talk a bit about representing the organization and seeing different, like,
and I'm talking specifically about organizations like ours, perhaps like yours, who started with a certain group of people that necessarily was a group of people who knew each other and who were somehow homogeneous. It doesn't have to be like that. I mean, the more diverse our environment, our professional environment is, some projects can start on a totally different basis, involving from the beginning different people, diverse people. I'm talking, specifically about organizations that already exist, and that they started within a specific context that we wish little by little to change.
Great. And so I'm going to move on to our last section here, which is about events. And this is one of the places where I guess we're most visible in our events. And my first question is, does good accessibility make an event inclusive?
When you say accessibility, you mean physical accessibility? Of course not. Of course not.
That was an easy one for you to knock down. So why is it important that an event goes beyond physical accessibility, and what does an inclusive event look like?
An inclusive event is an event, again, that makes people feel welcome, and that we are aware of their specific needs, and we're not going to make them feel uncomfortable or create barriers. Imagine even a physically accessible theater. If a blind person comes in and then they don't have audio description to have access to all the visual part of a show, of a concert, of a play, how accessible is that? How inclusive is that? Imagine that we're doing a guided tour in a museum and there's no audio description or there's no sign language, but it's totally accessible. How inclusive is that? Imagine that a trans person comes for a show or a visit, etc., and our front of house staff are totally, scared, shocked, and they don't know how to respectfully treat that person, address that person. So there's much more into creating inclusive events than actually making them physically accessible.
And I mean, we're talking there about sort of the people attending the event. I'm wondering if we can kind of look around at the other side and look at who we're having as performers and as speakers at our events. And there's a certain homogeneity that we can often see there. But one of the things that I hear in relation to having a more diverse panel, for example, it's like, how do we avoid box ticking or tokenism or being accused of this or like being perceived like this?
This is something that I think about very often because I'm sure I did that. I'm sure that in my professional life and choices, I ticked boxes and I turned people into tokens. I'm not sure if this is not part of our process. I mean, if we're honest about what we wish to do, using some people to take a first step might be something that we cannot avoid. Maybe the next step would be to make people, feel welcome to propose a project, to be them choosing the panel other people, not the usual people in the organization that make these decisions, so that we share the power. This is a question of power.
Yeah.
This is why inclusion is not a word many people feel happy with, because there is the issue of power in it. Somebody has the power to turn spaces or projects or events into something more inclusive. It's them who hold the keys to the door. So it is a process. It does bother me that I did it, but I'm very open, and I really go after certain people sometimes to say, give me feedback. Tell me how I could have done this in a different way, and eventually give the space for other people to do things within what is, for instance, our association's mission and our principles. That's the baseline for all of us, yeah, to embrace a mission and some principles, and then not to be always the same people making the decisions. I don't know if it makes sense. I'm still working around this a lot as well.
Well, I'm very glad to have your thoughts on it, because I've been trying to think through some of the same things, and it's always nice to have different ideas here, because I mean, the point is that this isn't something where you can just type it into Google and find out what the answer is. So it's something where, we need to talk about it and come up with different ideas. And I mean, you talk about being open to your own mistakes as well, and asking for feedback.
And also circulate more outside our bubble. I think that's important. I've attended a number of events in Lisbon that are very much related to the issues we're discussing, and a number of other people who discuss them, but they are never at those places that are organized by other people, not by the people we normally know or work with. So you need to get out of your comfort zone. You need to get to know. You need to show that you are honestly interested in knowing, in becoming more aware, and see who else is working on this, how are they working on this, and maybe create different kinds of partnerships, different kinds of projects.
And I think, this is the answer to the question that a lot of people have about, I mean, in my network, I don't have I don't have people of diverse backgrounds, someone might say, and I don't know where to find people of diverse backgrounds. But the way you talk about it, this kind of process, going out of your bubble, going into different spaces, then this is a way to start slowly.
Giving other people the space you hold, for them to propose something, for them to do something.
Letting go a little bit of the power. In fact, recognizing that it is you who has that power. Great. This has been a really beautiful discussion, and now we're coming to the end of it. And if I can ask you, if there is one thing that you would like cultural leaders who are listening to this interview to take home with them and to think about, to remember, what would it be?
One thing, my God. To listen more, to stop talking for a while, to listen more, because we need to go further. We need to move beyond the words we're using, understand their true meaning, if we wish to bring change to the way we do things. And for that, we need to be brave, and we need to take more risks.
Good. So that's the lesson for everyone out there. Very good. And I'm sure that people will want to find out more about you and your work. So we will put this in the show notes as well. But where can people find you?
Where you can, regarding our association, it's Access Culture, how do you say?
Hyphen,
sorry, yes. accessculture-portugal.org. And I'm also a blogger on Music on Culture. It's in Portuguese and in English. So there also you can find a bit more about me and us.
Fantastic, and I strongly recommend for everyone to check that out. I'm a big fan of your blog, especially. So thank you very much for joining us. We have also asked you if you have any other resources, and you make some suggestions. We'll include those in the notes as well. Thank you so much for being our first interviewee.
What an honor. Thank you.